So far you've seen variables and that we must assign our variables a type. Using the var keyword, C# can infer our type, but in all cases, even when types are inferred, types are still being assigned. By giving a variable a type, it helps us catch errors and allows the compiler to make optimizations. When we assign a type to a variable, we can never change the type of that variable. Meaning, if we assign a variable to be a type of string, it can never contain number data or, say, true or false values. We have many different types in C#, as well as our own ability to create our own. The first type is the string type, which just holds text. Here you can see we're defining it with the type and with the var keyword. We put our text between quotes, but what if the text includes quotes? Well, you can put a backslash before each of those quotes. Another type is called a character, and this represents only one letter, and it is denoted by apostrophes. Add more than one letter and you'll get a compile error. With C# and, well, a lot of other programming languages, logic is a key aspect of working with the language. And for that, we have Boolean types. These types represent either a true or false value. C# also comes with a lot of number types. By default, we use the int type. This represents a number between positive 2 billion to negative 2 billion. You could also drop the sign for the number. For instance, if you were calculating the age of fossils, you would never use negative numbers. By dropping the sign, the range of the number extends from 0 to 4 billion. If you still need a larger number, then you need to use a different type. A long is a 64-bit number, which gives you a massive range. Floating point numbers are handled by the double. This is a 64-bit number that contains a lot of information, and it should work for most general user applications. We also have the float, which is a 32-bit floating number. This produces a less precise number, but works well for games where precision doesn't need to be exact. If you need a larger number, then you can use a decimal, which is a 128-bit number. This is a type that you could use for financial calculations. With smaller types like the double and float, precision errors would accumulate to eventually produce incorrect calculations with money, whereas the decimal avoids this issue entirely. So which number type should you use? Well, for numbers, I recommend starting with the int and double, unless there's a very good reason to use a different type. Think of the other types as specialized tools for specific situations. In time, you'll know when to use them, but when starting out, it's best to grow comfortable with your hammer and wrench first before playing with those needle nose pliers.
Okay, let's play around with some types. So here I have my solution open, and I have program.cs opened up. I'm going to select this challenge code here, which we did in the last episode. I'm going to delete that. So now we have a fresh main method here. And let's create a string, and I'll just simply call this my string, and this will be a string that just says hello. So that's our text. We're writing hello. Now once we have our string, we can't change the type of the string itself. So if I take my string and I try to assign it a number, right away we get this squiggle, and you can see here it says this actually represents a 32-bit signed integer. And what I'm trying to do is assign it to a string, and the message also says cannot implicitly convert type int to string. So once we define the type of the variable, we're stuck using that type. I'm going to delete this here. Now oftentimes you're going to be wanting to use, say, quotes within your string. So let's create a quote string, and we'll put in our quotes here, and we're going to start off with a quotation. So I just put backslash, and then I put some more quotes, and then I write smile, comma, backslash again, and more quotes like so. So this has smile, and the quotes are actually going to be printed. And we can see that. I'm going to just type CW, and then we'll tab over, and we'll print out the quote. And let's run this. We'll run without debugging. And you can see we get the quotes listed in here. There are actually other special characters that are preceded with the backslash. For instance, there's the T, which actually tabs things over. And we even have an N, which adds a break, a new line break, and that's \n, like so. Let's see what the result of this is. Here you can see smile, and then you can see we have this tabbing right here, she said, and then we have the break. Now strings are collections of characters, and these are represented by the char type. So we'll add some space here, and we'll just simply create a char like so. And again, you can see that this is a keyword and it's showing up in blue. And we will say this is the first letter, and we're going to assign it. And notice how I'm using these apostrophes here. And I put an A. So the first letter variable is being assigned a character A. Now let's create another char. And this time let's do ABC. Now we get a squiggle. This indicates that we're adding too many characters. What this variable is expecting is a single character, whereas we're trying to provide many characters. Now if I try to use quotes, you'll notice that the error does not go away. Well, here it's saying that we're trying to provide a string to a char, but let's get rid of both the B and the C, and you can see we still get an error. It's still, C# is still assuming this is a type of string. To indicate that we're working with the char, we use apostrophes. Now you should feel right at home working with the int, so we can create a number and we can assign this to 10, like so. And there are many other different types of numbers. Now starting out, you should just use the int, but there are certain number types that you may use in particular situations. One of them is called the unsigned int, and this is a type of uint. This simply means that there can be no negative numbers. And we can just say another number like this and assign it to 100. And now we have an unsigned integer. Let's create another one, and we'll call this yet another number, and we'll assign this to -100. And by doing this, we get an error because it's telling us the constant value of -100 cannot be converted to a uint because an unsigned integer has no concept of a negative number. And we'll delete this. Oftentimes, you'll be working with floating points, so you'll use a double. So we'll set the temperature to say 98.6. We also have the option to use a float, which is like a double. We get floating points, but we don't have as much information or precision as a double. A float is 32 bits, whereas a double is 64 bits. By default, we always use the double. And you can see here, if we put the temperature to be 32.0, and I put in a semicolon here, this number is being assumed to be a type of double, which is why we're getting this error when we assign it to the freezing variable. And to fix this, we just put an F after that. We do a simple little cast, and we'll be covering casting in the next episode. Now, types may behave differently depending on operations that we do on them. So let's take a double, and we're going to call this result, and we're going to divide 3 by 2. Like so, and then what we'll do is we'll print out the result. Here, now let's save this and go here, and let's launch this start without debugging, and you can see we get the result of 1.5. Now let's look at the same operation, except this time let's do this with integers. We'll call this int result, and we're going to divide 3 by 2. Now, can you guess what the answer of this is going to be? Think about it for a moment, and then when you're ready, start without debugging. You can see here with the double, we got 1.5 because we're working with floating points. But with integers, C# drops the floating point information. So 3 divided by 2 using integer math is 1.
C# provides you with a whole lot of types, and when you run out of them, you can even create your own. If you want to learn more about types, then subscribe to this channel to see new videos about them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.